We often imagine Abraham Lincoln as a stoic giant, a marble man of unshakable resolve, the face of American strength. But this image, carved in stone on our memorials, is a myth. The real Lincoln was not a man devoid of darkness, but one who lived his entire life in its shadow, battling what he called his melancholy, a profound, lifelong depression. This is not the story of a perfect hero. This is the story of how a man, acquainted with the deepest despair, harnessed his own inner turmoil to save a nation from tearing itself apart. Before the age of psychology, before terms like depression even existed, people spoke of the soul in different terms. In the 19th century, melancholy was often seen as a sign of intellectual depth, a sensitivity that separated the profound from the shallow. But for Lincoln, it was a beast. From a young age, he was known for his sudden, deep spells of gloom. Friends in his youth worried he might take his own life, once removing all knives and sharp objects from his presence. He wrote poetry about suicide and spoke of the grave as a welcome release. This wasn't a fleeting sadness, it was a constant companion. So how does a man on the brink of despair become one of history's greatest leaders? The answer lies in his ambition. For Lincoln, ambition was not just a desire for power, it was a survival mechanism. He once described it as a little engine that knew no rest. This relentless drive to achieve, to make his mark on the world, was the counterweight to the crushing force of his depression. It gave him a purpose, a reason to get out of bed, a direction to channel his immense intellectual energy. While his melancholy pulled him inward, his ambition pushed him outward, into the law, into politics, and eventually onto the national stage. He wasn't running from his pain. He was trying to build something larger than it. Then came the presidency, and with it, the Civil War. The nation was collapsing, and the pressures on Lincoln were unimaginable. This is where his lifelong battle with depression became his greatest asset. Think about it. A leader who has never known true suffering cannot possibly comprehend the suffering of a nation at war. A leader who has only known stability cannot navigate chaos. Lincoln's personal darkness gave him a unique and powerful lens. When he walked through the hospitals, filled with wounded and dying soldiers, he wasn't just a commander-in-chief performing a duty. He was a man who understood their pain on a visceral level. His own personal tragedies compounded the national crisis. In 1862, at the height of the war, his beloved son, Willie, died of typhoid fever. The White House was plunged into mourning. Mary Todd Lincoln was inconsolable, and Lincoln himself was shattered. Yet he had to lead. He had to make decisions that would send thousands more sons to their deaths. This is the crucible where his emotional resilience was forged. He didn't compartmentalize his grief, he integrated it. He allowed his sorrow to deepen his empathy, to connect him to the shared grief of the American people. He could hold the immense sorrow of the nation because he had carried his own for a lifetime. He knew what it was to endure the unendurable. This profound understanding of human suffering is woven into his greatest speeches. When we read the Gettysburg Address or his second inaugural address, we're not just reading political documents, we're reading the words of a man who has stared into the abyss. His language is filled with humility, compassion, and a deep sense of shared humanity. Phrases like, "with malice toward none, with charity for all," weren't just political rhetoric. They were the conclusions of a man who understood that everyone on both sides of a conflict is struggling with their own burdens. His depression didn't make him weak, it made him wise. It stripped away the arrogance and self-righteousness that so often accompany power, leaving behind a core of profound empathy. Other leaders might have broken under the strain. They might have become brittle, angry, or tyrannical. But Lincoln became more flexible, more patient, more forgiving. He famously filled his cabinet with his political rivals, men like William Seward and Salmon Chase, who openly disrespected him. Why? Because a man who has battled his own inner demons is less threatened by the egos of others. He understood that unity required him to look past personal slights and focus on the greater good. His own internal struggle taught him how to manage the external conflicts of a divided country. He wasn't afraid of dissent or disagreement because he lived with it inside his own mind every single day. Lincoln's story transforms our understanding of leadership and mental health. We are taught to hide our vulnerabilities, to project an image of flawless strength. Lincoln shows us a different path. He shows us the true strength isn't the absence of weakness, but the ability to persevere in spite of it. His melancholy was not a flaw to be overcome, but an integral part of who he was, the very source of his empathy, his resilience, and his humanity. He didn't conquer his depression. He learned to live with it, to work with it, and ultimately to draw from it the strength to lead a nation through its darkest hour. So the next time you look at that face on the $5 bill, don't just see the stoic icon. See the man behind the myth. See the young man who feared his own mind, the grieving father who wept in the White House, the leader who carried the weight of a war and the weight of his own soul. Lincoln's legacy isn't just about freeing the slaves or preserving the Union. It's a powerful, timeless lesson that our greatest strengths can often be found in the places we perceive as our deepest weaknesses. His journey teaches us that even in the midst of profound darkness, it is possible to find purpose, to lead with compassion, and to build something that endures. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more journeys into the hidden corners of history. Your support helps us tell these important stories.